lot of people seem to enjoy the direction that the Pokemon series is going in. And while I don't think there is anything bad with the series evolving and trying new things, I don't necessarily like the direction that the games are going for. I understand that Game Freak, Nintendo tries to grab an overall wider demographic, something that works for the masses. I completely understand that, but I feel like over the years, at least my relationship with the series has kind of just not been the same. I recall the days, when I started playing the series. I started with Pokemon Stadium, then going on to Generation 3 with Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. Those were my first mainline Pokemon games. Going into Generation 4 was great. Generation 5 was brilliant. Generation 6 was literally a new introduction to the series going into 3D, and then they just kept on going with Generation 7, 8, 9, and I think it's somewhere around Gen 7 or 8 where I kind of started to not enjoy the games like I used to. If you ask me what my top 3 generations in the series are, hands down, I have to say Gen 3, 4, and 5. And I don't know if it has to do with the direction in art style, the change in 3D, but the new games nowadays just don't hit the same like they used to for me. I think Pokemon worked really, really well as a 2D game. There was just so much more life. I felt a lot more passion from the developers developing these games. Everything just felt a little better than they do now. Everything now with the newer games just feels like it's sucking, like it feels like Game Freak is sucking the soul out of the series. It's not where I personally want the series to be. Gen 1 and 2 was a pretty standard game. It was them just kind of getting their feet wet with the mechanics, the world, the monster design, everything. Generation 3 is one of my favorite because a lot of people at the time when that generation came out did not like the games because apparently it strayed away from what the games were. Personally, I don't think so. I think, if anything, Gen 3 is, visually speaking, one of the prettiest generations ever. And then with the introduction of abilities and natures, it was great. Nowadays we get major stuff like, I forgot the mechanic for Generation 9, but we get like Z moves and Dynamax. Oh, Terastallization. That's what it is. Which heavily impact the game, but with something so, I don't want to say the impact of natures and abilities was small because it was huge, but it still kind of kept the games in a certain light, which I don't really know how to describe. I could say the same thing for Generation 4 with the physical special split. It was a step in the right direction. It made Pokemon, certain monsters, its movesets, their stats, just the way they play, just completely different. Visually, Generation 4 is up there as well. I could say the same about Gen 5. Gen 5, a lot of people give flack for the monster designs. Some people didn't like Black and White because it only had its original 156 monsters, but it was new. It kind of forced your hand to use something new and made you get out of your comfort zone. So I think Gen 5 was great. I think the stories in Black and White and Black and White 2 were fantastic. I'm not saying that they didn't have their flaws, but I think Gen 5 was definitely a step in the right direction, especially with introducing things such as hidden abilities. It just changed the game for a lot of mods. X and Y, it's kind of lumped into the 3D thing, but I think X and Y gets a pass because it was something new. It was fitting, and it seems like nowadays they've use these X and Y models, even going into the Switch, going into Pokemon Sword and Shield, going into Pokemon, what are the newest ones? Scarlet and Violet. And while I don't think there's anything wrong with reusing assets, I think it's just, I don't think, some people call it lazy. I don't think it's lazy. I think as a business, I think it's smart, because you have to think about how many, even when they decided to cut the national dex in Sword and Shield and not include every single mon, it's still a lot of Pokemon to animate and work on. So I don't necessarily think it's lazy, but I think it's I just want something new, and I understand that sort of stuff takes a lot of work. But with X and Y, I mean, it was new. These 3D models, though they seemed a little lifeless, the color in these models seemed a little less saturated. I think it worked. And this is where the introduction of gimmicks started to happen with Mega Evolutions, which some people like, some people disliked. I've seen various opinions on this, but I personally liked it. I think some of the designs are questionable. Some of the designs are a little bit extra, but I think overall it was good for the game. Some people thought they were broken, but I think my solution is, like, if you take what Dynamax did with the 3-turn thing, which Dynamax, if I'm not mistaken, all it ever did was increase the HP of the mons. But if you take that 3-turn aspect and applied it to Mega Evolution, to where you can only be Mega Evolved for 3 turns, I think it works as a way to kind of balance it out. I will admit, having a Pokemon Mega Evolved until it basically faints, it's a little broken. Especially with things that didn't need it, like Mega Rayquaza, Mega T-Tar, Mega Garchomp, Primals like Groudon and Kyogre. So I personally liked it. I wish they would come back, but X and Y 6th gen still had that like charm to it. As far as Generation 7, I personally have only played through Gen 7 one time, and that was the original Sun and Moon. I don't dislike the games, nor do I like them, and I've always wanted to give them another go. But I understand every game has like tutorials at the beginning of the game, but for some reason these games feel like they drag like a lot at the start. And like, it was a couple years ago that I tried to play Ultra Moon, and I just could not. I feel like one of these days maybe I'll give it a fair shot, but I don't think Sun and Moon are bad games. I feel like once you get past that first couple of hours of the game, I think it's great. Z moves I don't really care about. I think some of those I think Z moves are just broken. But I think Gen 7 was where they kind of were like, okay, 6 generations in, this whole gym system of there goes my Snapchat. But this whole thing of just going to the region, fighting 8 gyms, and then going to fight the Elite Four, and then on to the champion. I mean, they did it for 6 generations, and Gen 7, I will give it this. They tried something new. It worked. I think it was refreshing. But I think Gen 7 is still good. It's still good, a good pair of games, because it was still on the 3DS. If they wanted to reuse those assets, I understand. Gen 8 and Gen 9, I just can't see myself playing Sword and Shield ever again. Actually, you know what? Sword and Shield wasn't a bad game. I think I enjoyed Sword and Shield more than I did Scarlet and Violet. The only thing that I think Scarlet and Violet has going for it is the open world aspect. Sword and Shield was kind of still the traditional formula that we have all known. They actually went back to the gym system, and really the only thing of note for Gen 8 was the Dynamax gimmick and Also the wild area, which in retrospect, if you go back and try to play the wild area, it was I guess open world, but it is so ugly. It is so terrible to look at. It is just, in my opinion, awful. It was exciting at the time because it was showing us signs of the future, but it was just in retrospective, it's just terrible. And then Scarlet and Violet. I have quite a bit to say about Scarlet and Violet. I think the direction of 3D and like a 3D open world is great, but I think my issues were with these games is that really it's just the performance issues. Now, I don't know if they've been patched. I don't know if this is something that's been worked on by Game Freak, but I did play Scarlet and Violet for a good 20 to 30 hours. Got a couple of gym badges, beat a couple of the Titan Mons. I think like 2 of the Star Leaders. I'm not entirely sure. I don't quite remember. It's been a couple of months since I actually even played the game. But really, it's just the performance issues. And I think I'm tired of Pokemon being on this yearly annual release tradition. I think it's hurting the games. I think they need to take a step back, because Pokemon has just become another Call of Duty, another Madden, where they release these annual releases. And I'd rather get like a Pokemon game that'll last me for like 3 to 5 years, right? And they just keep updating it, and they just keep working on it, and you can actually get more out of the game instead of, okay, Gen 8 released, now let's go ahead and go on to the next generation. I know that Gen 8 did kind of last a little bit because Diamond and Pearl. Diamond and Pearl it just did not work. Even when the Diamond and Pearl remakes came out, they still treated Sword and Shield as their main online game. I could talk about Pokemon Legends Arceus. I think Legends Arceus was kind of something that sparked something in me to like love this series again. And not to say that I hate it, but it's not the same love like it used to be. If you ask me, if I was to choose between Scarlet and Violet or Pokemon Emerald or Pokemon Platinum or Pokemon Black 2 and White 2, I'm picking those other Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4. Or did I say Gen 2? Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5, even Gen 6, Gen 7 games over Sword and Shield, over Scarlet and Violet. There was a couple of things in Legends Arceus which didn't make it to Scarlet and Violet, which is something that had me really, really confused. I don't really understand that, but you know, I think that's a video for another day. I don't know. I just don't understand why they decided not to implement some of the things that worked fantastically. Is fantastically a word? I don't know. That worked brilliantly in Legends Arceus. I don't know why they didn't implement that in Scarlet and Violet. Because Legends Arceus had its flaws and it had its issues, performance issues, but it felt like there was some passion still left in there. The game overall ran smoothly. Scarlet and Violet, I mean, forget about it. Just look it up on YouTube. I'm sure there's a compilation of just glitches and bugs and performance issues, which that was really my main issue. And the visuals of Scarlet and Violet, I mean, it's not anything impressive. It really isn't. If I want to play an open world game, I think I'm just going to be playing Tears of the Kingdom. Pokemon is just not there yet. It will, I feel, eventually one day be there, but I mean, Pokemon is just doing its thing. They want to keep doing what they want to do. You know, I don't really understand. They'll get there. It's taking them quite a bit, but that's it. I don't know what this video was. It's just me rambling on about the Pokemon series and how I just don't like Scarlet and Violet. Maybe I'll turn over a new leaf and maybe my opinion changes on these games, but it's just, I don't know. They don't make them like they used to. Maybe that's just me being an old head. But that's it. I'm done.